I had a member of staff M try to force himself onto another staff member F. She chose not to press charges. That didn't sit right with me. To preface, I live in a country that employs a large foreign or expat workforce in pretty much every industry and in all levels. For someone to move here for work, they have to be sponsored by a company or the individual that's employing them. I own and operate a small restaurant business here and employ more than a handful of foreigners as servers, cleaners, kitchen staff, drivers, etc. So here's the story. I was lounging on my couch, enjoying the last of my weekend one day when I get a call from telling me that one of our sponsored employees, a server, let's call her Janice, was picked up for indecent exposure essentially. Long story short, she was caught hooking up with a guy in a private booth at a local restaurant. Basically, the police walked in on them whilst engaged in some seriously heavy petting. They were fully clothed, but the guy she was with, or practically on top of I should say, has his junk out. Turns out he works at the restaurant 2 doors down from where she worked. After a bit of chastising and threatening to escalate the situation and have them deported to sufficiently scare their senses back into them, they let them go, but not before signing a pledge-type document promising to never repeat the offense, or else. A slap on the wrist basically, and everyone got to go home. But it doesn't end there. That night something clicked in my brain and I had the thought, how and why did the police find them in a private booth in the back of a restaurant before the restaurant's own staff did? Double quotes. So I called the restaurant the next day. I thought maybe they called the police on them immediately for some reason. Or maybe the couple got belligerent when staff asked him to stop. Turns out the staff didn't notice a thing. In fact, up until that day the police have never been to that restaurant before, and when they did they simply walked in, went straight to the back booths where the two were sat and busted right in. I realized this meant that someone must have seen them and called the cops on them point blank. The question was who? I decided to speak to Janice. I wanted to speak to her anyway that day, both to check in and get her version of the situation. I also gave her the employer, you did something stupid chat and reassure her that she's keeping her job. I also wanted to ask her who she thought called her in. Without hesitation, she said it had to be Sammy, who was one of our drivers. Why do you think it was Sammy? I asked. He's the one that dropped me off at the restaurant that day. He might have seen my friend walking right after me and called the police on us, she said. I knew the part of him dropping her off was true, that literally his job and her only free mode of transport. Well, that sounds a bit drastic. Why would he do that even if he had seen you do anything? I asked. She claimed it was because he was jealous. He was really into her apparently, and kept trying to get her into bed, she said. What genuinely pissed me off was when she told me that he actually tried to force himself on her once, and she fought him off, and that he hasn't tried or even said anything since other than be very short and curt with her. My immediate response was, why on earth would you not tell me, or one of your managers right away? She said she had dealt with it her way, and it stopped. Plus she didn't want anybody to get fired on her account, and she didn't want any interaction with the authorities, so she decided not to make a big deal out of it in the first place. She also declined to press formal charges against him, which I advised her to do. Her declining infuriated me even more. This guy was going to get off scot-free. Now clearly I was about to fire Sammy, but in my mind that wasn't enough. For someone to attempt to rape a person basically, and not get in trouble for it, not okay with me. But it seemed like it was something I had to live with. Obviously, my next conversation of the day was with Sammy. My intent was to confront him with the accusations. I called him into my office. I didn't really know where to start, so I went with, obviously you've heard about what happened to Janice this weekend. He stepped in it right away. Heard about it, came the unexpectedly proud response from a proud AF and positively beaming Sammy. I called it in. And this is where it started to get super satisfying. You see, for a couple of years since I met Sammy, every now and then he would pull out and show us all pictures of his wife, who was back home living with his mother. She was younger than him and quite beautiful, but sadly barren, which is apparently why she settled with an older fart like him. He was so proud of how pretty she was. He was also a devout religious man, or so he claimed. So I asked, and why call the police? He came back with, after I dropped her off I waited to see who she was meeting because she's a troublemaker woman. When I saw the man walking after her I call police because I know him and he is married and this is against the laws of God and man. I'm smiling now. I knew I got him. Why do that instead of calling your direct manager, or even me? and before even seeing for yourself what they were doing exactly at that, why make it my problem and the company's problem? What she does in her own time. Silence. Head down counting his shoes. Sammy, I know why. I know what you did. Janice just told me. I'm disgusted by you and sorry that we hired you. He had the audacity to mumble, I only tried once, sir. I almost slapped him. Anyways, I fired him, handed him a one-way ticket home, which was in 4 hours, and told him to Gifo. This is where I get my not-so-petty revenge. I had his house phone number saved somewhere from we hired him. It was on his CV. I knew that, because I called him there to interview him before we first hired him. I waited until his flight took off and dialed the number. I assumed either his mother or wife would answer the call, but I was wishing for the latter. I got my wish. Hello, Mrs. Sammy. I'm your husband's employer. Well, his former employer anyway. Just so you know, I fired him a few hours ago and he's on a flight home as we speak. His flight number is XXXXX. He will be arriving at XXXX. Just so you are aware, I was forced to fire him because he attempted to rape a fellow employee half his age. I'm sorry, I said, and promptly hung up, but not before hearing her gasping in shock. Happened a few weeks ago when I gave my step-nephew my old Xbox S, but the drama is still going on. Now some background. I'm not rich, heck I'm not even middle class. It's just that through very strict budgeting I can pay my bills and buy myself something nice every once in a while. A couple of months ago I ran into a deal on an Xbox Series X. Always wanted one, so I bought it and shelved my Series S. My stepsister found out I had it and asked about getting it for her son. Honestly, these things don't sell for much used, and there isn't a big demand, so I just gave it to her. This is where the choosing begging comes in. The day after I give it to her, she calls and asks for my login information. She says she doesn't want to buy any games, and seeing I can only play one at a time, I should allow her son to play the others. I have money, so why not help a single mother out? I told her no and suggested the Game Pass Ultimate that comes with about 100 free games. Her reply, oh well, give me that information then. That sounds great. I told her again no and that it was only $15 and she could pick up card anywhere. Her response, oh, when can I expect the card? He really wants to play. I'll go tell him you will get him a card here soon. Finally, I got it through her head that she would just have to break from the bar and getting her nails done and but the card. So now she has been trashing me on Facebook for the past couple of weeks according to KepDad. I don't have Facebook. The sad part is people are agreeing with her, saying it's my responsibility to pay for games and the services because what good is having the system if you can't use it? Some have even suggested suing me for emotional damages to her son. But hey, it's all good. She just posted a picture of her nails she just had done and said if I wasn't so greedy she could have had her hair done too. Twitter gave my step-nephew a game system. Step sister and strangers think I'm responsible for everything associated with it. Entitled mom expects $250 gifts for her kid on every holiday. Ugh, so I have to get this off my chest. I just can't believe the audacity of some people. Let me tell you about Mrs. Smith, one of the moms in my daughter's class. You wouldn't believe the email she sent out to all of us parents. She seriously expects us to each buy her kid a $250 gift for every holiday, including Blacktober. I mean, come on, who does she think she is? Honestly, I've heard some pretty entitled stories, but this takes the cake. Her poor kid, Alex, is such a sweetheart and doesn't deserve to be put in the middle of this ridiculous situation. I can only imagine how embarrassed they must feel. It's just not right to put that kind of pressure on the other parents and kids in the class. The worst part is, it's not like she's even discreet about it. She sent out a group email with a wish list, and even had the nerve to say that it's for our children's happiness and bonding. What kind of bonding is she expecting with gifts that expensive? And to demand it for every holiday? That's just insane. I talked to a few other moms, and we all agreed this is absolutely ridiculous. We all want our kids to be happy and have fun, but there's a limit to how much we should be spending on gifts. It's not like we're made of money. Plus, I'm a firm believer that it's the thought that counts, not the price tag. Anyway, I just had to get this off my chest. I'm not sure what we're going to do about it yet, but we definitely can't give in to her crazy demands. Maybe we can come up with a plan to show her that the true spirit of the holidays isn't about material possessions, but about spending time with loved ones and making meaningful memories. Here's hoping. Has anyone else experienced something like this? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I'm moving out. I'm moving out on Monday, and I'm just going to leave and send them a text because throughout these years my parents have been manipulative and played too many mind games, and I don't want to risk having to go through more manipulation upon telling them. If I tell them over the phone while I'm leaving, at least at that moment when they start being manipulative, I can immediately end the conversation and hang up the phone rather than sit through it and deal with more stress. I just need some encouragement. I'm worried.